Welcome to News Mongolia, where we bring you the latest stories and updates from across the nation and beyond. I'm Batsir Namshir. On News Mongolia today, amendments made to the law on parliamentary elections. Social insurance fund revenue increases by 315.5 billion MNT. Mongolia is cultivating 154 hectares of greenhouse-growing vegetables. For the news, stay tuned. Parliament has amended the election law following a constitutional court ruling prohibiting parliament members, ministers and officials from distributing printed materials from January 1st of an election year until nomination. This move aims to ensure equal opportunities for all candidates and prevent undue advantages for incumbents.
The Constitutional Court ruled that the provision in the election law allowing members of parliament to distribute printed reports and materials to voters from January 1st of an election year until their official nomination was unconstitutional. The court concluded that the provision gave sitting members of parliament, ministers and officials an unfair advantage, creating unequal conditions for other candidates. Parliament accepted the Constitutional Court's ruling and amended the election law.
From the beginning of an election year until the nomination process starts, whether you are a parliament member or a cabinet member or an ordinary citizen, the distribution of printed materials is now prohibited under the amended law. However, meetings, conferences and gatherings to report on your work, if intended purely for public information and not campaigning, are now equally accessible to everyone.
Previously, after the nomination process began during the official campaign period, no one was allowed to hold meetings under the pretext of reporting on their work. This ban remains in place. What's changed is that before the campaign period starts, any individual, regardless of the position, can now hold work-related report meetings under equal and fair conditions. The legal provision that allows individuals to distribute work reports through newspapers, journals, and other non-printed formats during non-election years is unchanged. Members of Parliament have clarified that from January 1st of an election year until the nomination date, there are no legal restrictions on presenting work reports to voters through online platforms or social media.
In no way have members of parliament granted themselves any undue advantage. I believe this issue should be addressed within the scope of the Constitutional Court's specific ruling. Our working group has acted accordingly. Overall, we are fine with this outcome. But looking ahead, it's clear that the election law must be reviewed and revised.
Members of Parliament have stated that it's necessary to revise or repeal provisions of the election law that hinder fair competition, undermine equal opportunity, and provide advantages to sitting members of Parliament. They emphasize that this issue should be addressed as part of broader changes to the law on parliamentary elections, including efforts to reduce campaign spending and create a more equitable legal framework.
In the first quarter of 2025, Mongolia's social insurance fund saw both its revenues and expenditures rise significantly, driven largely by increased pension payouts and social welfare benefits. With over 1.5 trillion MNT collected and 1.4 trillion spent, the pension and benefits insurance funds played a major role in supporting citizens and growing demand for social services. In the first quarter of 2025, the Social Insurance Fund of Mongolia recorded revenues totaling 1,573.5 billion MNT, an increase of 315.5 billion MNT compared to the same period in 2024. The growth in revenue was largely driven by the pension fund, which contributed an additional 259.4 billion MNT, and the benefits insurance fund, which saw an increase of 23.6 billion MNT. In the first quarter of this year, expenditures from social insurance fund reached 1,443.2 billion MNT, marking an increase of 326.9 billion MNT compared to the same period of the previous year. The main contributors to this increase were the pension fund, with expenditures up by 278.8 billion MNT, and the benefits insurance fund, with expenditures up by 26.3 billion MNT. During the first quarter, the pension fund provided a total of 1.3 trillion MNT as pension payments to 513,800 citizens. This reflects an increase of 13,200 recipients and 279.9 billion MNT in disbursed pensions compared to the same period in 2024. Among pension recipients, 79.2% were old age pensioners, 12.5% were persons with development challenges, 4% were survivors or deceased providers, and 4.3% were military pensioners. The Benefits Insurance Fund distributed 117.4 billion MNT to 47,700 people in the first quarter of 2025, representing an increase of 17,300 beneficiaries and 47.9 billion MNT in benefits compared to the same period last year. Maternity and childbirth benefits were provided to 13,300 individuals, amounting to 51.5 billion MNT, with a rise of 2,600 recipients and 19.2 billion MNT in benefits from the first quarter of 2024. A total of 643.6 billion MNT and social welfare benefits were provided to 2.2 million individuals in the first quarter of this year. This represents a decrease of 102,000 beneficiaries compared to last year, although the total amount of pensions and benefits dispersed increased by 6.9 billion MNT. Of these receiving social welfare services, 59.2% were beneficiaries of child allowances, 7.1% received support for mothers and single parents with multiple children, 6% received social welfare benefits, 3.9% accessed social welfare and development services, 2.6% were pension recipients, and 21.2% received other forms of support. Amid rising demand for fresh produce, Mongolia is intensifying efforts to expand greenhouse farming, cultivating vegetables on 154 hectares nationwide. While summer production meets up to 40% of domestic demand, winter output remains limited, covering only 10%. Authorities are now prioritizing support for winter greenhouse farming, including subsidized loans and digital registration, as they aim to scale up domestic production and reduce reliance on imports.
The country consumes an average of 83,000 tons of fresh vegetables annually. During the summer, around 40% of this demand is met by domestic production. However, that figure drops to just 10% in winter. Last year, 13,500 tons of vegetables were harvested from greenhouses, including 9,800 tons of cucumbers, more than 2,600 tons of tomatoes and peppers, 353 tons of leafy greens, and 702 tons of other vegetables. This year, authorities are working to determine what kind of support will be provided to individuals and businesses operating commercial greenhouses. The borrower now pays an 8% annual interest rate. The government provides interest rate support for the remaining 10% for those setting up winter greenhouses. These businesses are eligible for investment loans. Our ministry requires registration on the unified digital platform, sites like plant.mofa.go.mn. Farmers must register and have a verified account there. There are 4 12-hectare winter greenhouses in Mongolia. In comparison, in the Netherlands, it's possible to harvest 70 to 80 kilograms of cucumbers per square meter over a 4 to 5 month period. In Mongolia, yields are around 30 to 35 kilograms per square meter. One greenhouse in Ulaanbaatar supplies 90 to 120 tons of cucumbers to the city annually year-round. Each week, we harvest about 1,500 kilograms of produce. First, we select the seeds, then germinate them, which takes 30 to 40 days. After that, we begin harvesting in about 60 days. What we currently lack most is a qualified workforce. We urgently need to train agronomists. Farmers must also understand how to cultivate vegetables using proper techniques. It's not just about planting and leaving them. Winter greenhouse cultivation expanded from 32 hectares in 2020 to 29 hectares in 2024, a 7.5 hectare increase. Greenhouse vegetable production increased from 6,442 tons in 2020 to 13,500 tons in 2024, a growth of more than 6,700 tons. This year, subsidized investment loans for building winter greenhouses are being offered through commercial banks. One business has already secured a 1 billion MNT loan. Despite annual growth in winter greenhouse production, the domestic supply still covers only around 10% of winter vegetable demand. Industry experts say more supportive policies are needed.
Now let's take a look at currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. The newly appointed U.S. ambassador to Japan, George Glass, arrived in Tokyo on Friday. In his first press conference following his arrival, Glass expressed confidence that the ongoing trade talks between the U.S. and Japan would produce meaningful results. He emphasized that these negotiations are being prioritized at the highest level, including direct involvement from President Donald Trump.
George Glass, a seasoned business person and former U.S. ambassador to Portugal, was confirmed by the Senate earlier this month. He is expected to play a key role in reinforcing the U.S.-Japan alliance amid evolving regional dynamics.
The Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of Commerce are both people that I know and have spoken with and are brilliant in their fields, and they're also very creative, out-of-the-box thinkers. And when I saw that President Trump then decided he was going to get involved and has now named this his top priority, that's why I have a lot of confidence that we'll get something done. Have to look at the safety of Americans, American interest, American companies. We have to take into account the safety of Japanese citizens, how we're working together with our military and how we're pushing back, making sure that our military has all the issues taken care of and all the materials that they need to be able to successfully push back against a country like China. This is currently a partnership between the United States and Japan that is a powerful force for peace, a powerful force for prosperity, and a powerful force for progress in the region.
In his remarks, Ambassador Glass highlighted the importance of security cooperation between the two nations, stressing shared concerns about regional stability. He described the U.S.-Japan partnership as a cornerstone of peace and economic growth in the Asia-Pacific region.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Goodbye.